System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, June 26th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja Little Tanky Sumler. Happy Thursday, Amoja. How are you doing today?
Man, living hot than the devil's booty hole. It's hot.
Yep. Always know how to paint a picture with words, my friend. That is for sure.
It's advanced literary degrees right there.
Man, that's why they pay you the big bucks.
Man.
Or at least they pay the people big bucks who are trying to get you out the way. I don't know. I don't know how it goes. Someone's making some money.
Scales of economy, you know what I'm saying? I'm creating jobs out in this motherfucker.
We're creating jobs. That's a fact. That's a fact. Now they got us. They doing double time on us. I know that's for sure.
Oh my!
They got over. They're approving overtime for us.
Man.
I just want to jump out. Let's just start with a video, shall we? Let's start with something. It's quick.
Let's get right in.
Let's get right into it. Here we have, not my president, somebody else.
Yes, he is.
Not my president. No, he's not.
I'm an American, so
last week,
I can't distance myself from the ugly things.
I'm going to distance myself.
Yeah, it is.
So as you know, you probably saw this last week. Trump said that there was a ceasefire. Remember that whole thing? It's a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Everything is.
But right before then, he said no ceasefire, total surrender, unconditional surrender. 2 words. That was like 48 hours before, man.
And then he got it. And then, this is the question he was asked out on the White House lawn. Let's take a listen.
You know what? We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Well, we did hear no using of the N-word, the nuclear word. Now we're going to straight F-bombs.
On network TV.
On network TV. Is Donald Trump, as the kids say, crashing out? 6 months? We're not 6 months quite in, my friend.
Man, he said that Kamala would have had a war in 6 months. He did it in 5. Look at that. That's efficiency right there. I need some celebration, goddammit. He shaved a month off the timeline. Okay. Seriousness. What does he mean when he say they've been fighting so long? I mean, they bombed them 12 days ago, man. Like, the fucking Palestinian conflict is almost at least this hot phase of the war is at 3 years old. This is 12 days. I mean, the Ukrainian-Russian conflict goes back to 22. I mean, again, I'm just talking about the hot phase of this, right? I mean, really, the history for all of these conflicts is much, much older. But as a shooting war goes, the Iranian conflict with the Israelis started abruptly when the Israelis bombed the Iranians. Let's keep this in context. Remember, we joked about on this show all the Iranian government and all of their affiliated, tweet partner channels, out there talking crazy. And one of the first things I saw him say was, remember, Israel started this, right? So we went from a president within 2 days, it was talking about 2 words, unconditional surrender, to watching the top secret Microsoft facility in Tel Aviv get smoked, watch their biological research agency get smoked. They ostensibly their Pentagon gets smoked to the point whereas Israel put laws on the books saying you'll go to prison fucking jail for taking videos of this stuff because the Iranians, they didn't want there to be any confirmation that this was happening. They wanted to totally blanket the news with only the reports of what was getting bombed in Iran. Meanwhile, on Iranian Twitter, you got goat farmers out in the mountains like, I never seen none of it. Meanwhile, every Israeli, video you see on TikTok or on Twitter Twitter is them running to the shelters, fights in the shelters, talking about getting it in the shelters, all of these things, right? Because Israelis, making sure that the help don't get in, making sure that if you ain't from Israel, ain't no shelters for you. Like all this. So we're seeing totally different society reactions to this madness, all of this within 12 days, right? The word on the street was it was not Iran at all that asked for the ceasefire. It was the Israelis that begged for it because all of their years of out there touting they have the world's best missile defense, that shit got exposed, bra and panties. And again, we got a show where we use the language of the people. We cuss on here. We keep it as real as it can, and there's reasons why people won't watch this, why YouTube won't promote this. You know what I'm saying? Because of the way we talk. But the president of the United States, a guy that runs around with Kid Rock, Hulk Hogan, and fucking Conor McGregor out there dropping F-bombs, this on ABC. I mean, make it make sense, man. Is he crashing out?
Whatever they want.
I think he living his best little life, man. He probably be at another UFC show in a week or two. He ain't crashing out. He loving his life. He living his life. Just got a little egg in his face, He wipe it off with his little Armani napkins and his McDonald's napkins, Wow. Some extremes, man. Drinking a Diet Coke, washing it down. I don't think he's bothered at all. I think he's embarrassed, but he always got somebody he could throw under the bus. Look like it's about to be old Petey Hegseth there, out there talking about what a great job was done. Now, all of the estimates are saying it really wasn't that much that was done at all. Definitely not complete obliteration as has been described, not just apocalyptical devastation. And we still have the matter of 400 kilograms of uranium that's enriched to 60% purity. The mystery of the missing uranium. I mean, it sounds like a Scooby-Doo movie, right?
Yeah, so explain that a little bit because, like you mentioned, Pete Hegseth, I had a thing, but yeah, you said it perfectly.
Let's jump to it.
Saying? No. I mean, you said it perfectly. I just think that, okay, so you mentioned it, so, let's talk about that because the whole scuttlebutt the past day was these nuclear sites were hit, and they were touting that as a win. They were saying, okay, we hit these sites. You were mentioning Pete Hegseth, he was on air. He was talking about that stuff. And he was saying, we hit all the targets. We did everything we needed to do. We handled that. And people are trying to smear Trump's name. This is kind of another, I think, I know you said he's not crashing out, but it does seem like another little crack in the at least the MAGA world, the MAGA team of being like,
they're crashing the fuck out. Woo, those boys is they suffering because they believed the hype. I mean, look, it's funny to me because the Democrats all had this, they had to go through it. They're just now waking up from the hangover of Barack Obama. Some of them are just now starting to see how full of shit, Israeli grandpa is, AOCIA, they little darling, they've had to deal with this for a while, but the Republicans haven't, they all, it's just the corrupt Democrats. That's the problems, what's in their house. Now they having to deal with the problems in their house. You know what I'm saying? They thought they had a straight shooter. I mean, I don't know why you would look at Trump and think that this dude about to be the leader of your little straight shooter revolution, and come out there and tell all the truth. But again, we've talked about it on the show. Trump is good at giving you the 5% truth when the Democrats give you none. It's all spin, and so, they getting a sip of the water. It's dirt water, but they getting a sip of the water. And they're like, oh, it's so fresh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Obama and Flint,
There it is.
Yep. So, you are now seeing sort of, again, like we were saying, the Pete Hegseth interview, he's mentioning all these different things. I'll go ahead and play it, even though you already mentioned it, just so maybe our viewers can kind of see what he was on a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up. I'm still getting on this. Cue it up, John. I'm going to say cue it up, team.
I love it.
Yeah, right, even though I'm the one.
Oh, Mr. Hagsy himself.
What didn't happen? Step back for a second. Because of decisive military action, President Trump created the conditions to end the war, decimating, choose your word, obliterating, destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities. I want to read some of the assessments that have been provided, because whether it's fake news, CNN, MSNBC, or the New York Times, there's been fawning coverage of a preliminary assessment. I've had a chance to read it. Every outlet has breathlessly reported on a preliminary assessment from DIA. I'm looking at it right now. Again, it was preliminary, a day and a half after the actual strike.
He's already
when
doing
it admits itself in writing that it requires weeks to accumulate the necessary data to make such an assessment. It's preliminary. It points out that it's not been coordinated with the intelligence community at all. There's low confidence in this particular report. It says in the report there are gaps in the information. It says in the report multiple linchpin assumptions are what this assessment, a linchpin assumption, you know what that is? That means your entire premise is predicated on a linchpin. If you're wrong, everything else is wrong. And yet, and still, this report acknowledges it's likely severe damage. Again, this is preliminary, but leaked because someone had an agenda to try to muddy the waters and make it look like this historic strike wasn't successful.
You know, it's always someone trying to make them look bad, or, you know, the truth comes out and it's like, oh, well, they just want to make President Trump look bad. That's what's happening. So, like, let's talk about these nuclear facilities, because from all of the reports that we're receiving from our people, from our sources, it's not just us. We're not the only ones that report on this. It does not look as if those sites were obliterated. It doesn't look as if they have even been put out of commission. And you already alluded to this. Ain't no honey in that jar. There's no uranium there. It's already been moved. And it's hard to even, first of all, even if these facilities had been hit and truly damaged and truly put out of commission, there was no uranium. So these strikes are in almost every way, I would say, a complete and total failure. Okay. Now, maybe you got some intel based off what these bunker busters can do, trying to put one on top of the other. But guess who else got the intel? The Iranians and everyone else who witnessed these weapons in the field of war, or at least being deployed. You know, there's two things I want to ask. One, just your response on that. And, you know, Tom Cruise ain't really out there, is he? He's not going to be helping America blow up these little nuclear sites in their Star Wars scenario of flying through the narrow canyon to get to the site. So, just those two things.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Mission Impossible kind of iconography. Let's be honest. If it was something like this, it would be more of a Jason Bourne type situation where you send 15 killers down and you murder literally everybody in there, right? That would have been a far less, I don't know, there'd be less explosions, right? But you would have had a higher level of probability of achieving the agenda. You know what I'm saying? The problem is, you know, even the way that people have talked about Fordo. So let's talk about what Fordo is. Fordo, when you say nuclear site, people think in the American sense, like, oh, there's Minutemen down there, ICBMs, and weaponized uranium nuclear bombs. No, that's not what Fordo was. Fordo was a research site. They did enrichment, right? That's just making the impure uranium more pure. That's it. It sounds nefarious, but that's it. It wasn't like some type of machining operation. It wasn't like it's not a military site. I mean, that's all I can say is like, there's so many steps to the uranium fuel cycle. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like an oil refinery. for uranium. That's what it was. And everybody's like, well, if it wasn't militarized, why would you have to hit it in the mountain? Yeah, because motherfuckers coming to hit your shit, as clearly they did. Because as Trump has said, even enrichment is not okay. So they wanted to destroy these enrichment sites. And there's no proof that they were able to do so. When he's talking about intelligence, reports, where would those have been coming from? There's only one real, the more they talk, the more they give away the game. The only way they would have had that intelligence is if the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, was down on the ground. That's where the intel was always coming from. That's how they knew how deep it was. That's how they knew what the general layout was. The more they talk, the more they give away the game. And this is why in the last broadcast, we said very strong probability Iran will simply leave the NPT. And they did. Because come to find out, these guys that were down there sent to certify, they weren't militarizing this uranium. Well, they did just that after they put out this report that made it look very dubious what was happening, simply talking about enrichment ratios, which has literally, it's like saying, they told us the gasoline was E87, but it's really E93. And because of this, you know what I'm saying? That's literally what we're talking about, to give it to you in terms that make sense to regular people. The enrichment was more rich than a lot of people have. Most people only enrich their nuclear fuel to 3%. So that's all you need to sustain that's what you need to do a reactor, an energy reactor. But they weren't just doing energy. They were doing nuclear medicine. And whatever they were doing, the fact of the matter is the NPT says the only thing you can't do with your nuclear fuel is weaponize it. And that's what they were certified, and the dude in the International Atomic Energy Agency still continues to certify the uranium in Iran was not being weaponized. So, Pete Hegseth going out there and saying all these things, it looks like overcompensation. You don't have any assessments as to how much damage happened because the guys that would normally give you the intelligence have been kicked out of the country because you guys perverted all of that work, and again, we said it already. This is going to have huge effects on countries with the NPT because the NPT doesn't protect you. Like, you can sign it up, you can have all the protocols signed down, you can promise that you're not going to make nuclear weapons, and at the end of the day, if the West doesn't like what you're doing, they're still going to come and blow your shit up or try to blow your shit up. But again, he doesn't want to talk about the uranium. It would be very obvious if they had some type of breach that we would have something that would have been a contaminant throughout the country. And that's just not happened. Nobody's detected any radiation leaks or any of that. So there's no reason to believe that they damaged any type of nuclear activity in real time. Which leads to the billion-dollar question. Where's that uranium? What was their plans? What was their plans for this? This never looked like a plan to retrieve the 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium. I guess their hope was just to blow it all up and to contaminate Iran, which in and of itself is an incredibly violent act.
There's something that we learned about, something called the Cobra effect. And the Cobra effect is when you try to fix a problem and you end up making it worse. So what's happened is, the United States saying that they want to stop Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon has pushed them to the point where the only thing that can keep them safe is a nuclear weapon. And because we don't live in a vacuum, we have to now all the other countries that are thinking, do I want to build a nuclear weapon? Do I want to deal with all the drama that the United States brings if you try to do something like that? And all these little treaties that don't mean anything, and, especially if you're Israel or you're not involved in it at all. Again, I think this is something that North Korea understands. You could probably say the same thing about Pakistan. They when you are threatened by someone with a nuclear weapon, the only thing to stop them from utilizing that is to build a nuclear weapon. So now the rest of the countries, go ahead.
Iran has chosen a third path, and it's what they're calling now strategic ambiguity. No one knows what they're doing because they're no longer allowing their processes to be certified, So they're calling it nuclear ambiguity. I just want to say one more thing. When you were talking about the NPT, there was an emergency United Nations Security Council meeting about the attack on Iran. And one of the things that Sergei Lavrov, who's the foreign minister of Russia, the equivalent, again, of like a Mark Rubio, right? He said something quite alarming, quite interesting. He said, why is Israel even in this meeting? Israel is not a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is a meeting about the International Atomic Agency's performance as it relates to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel is not a member of these, so there's no reason for them to even be in there, right? Once again, these are things that are normally said quietly, but now are being said out loud. Why does Israel have a say in any of these things when, by every stretch of the imagination, if they were members of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, would be considered in violation because they have built nuclear weapons?
We talk about this often with the Biden administration, right? There was not supposed to be what do you call them? Not supposed to be all these Patriot missiles. It wasn't supposed to be THAAD. It wasn't supposed to be no strikes within Russia. And all of that changed. All these red lines were crossed several times. We saw maybe a few months back that Israel, saying that they wanted to hit nuclear sites. That was a big red line. The White House was saying, no, don't do that. We're not going to be hitting nuclear sites. It was a big topic of discussion. And now a few months later, the White House is, again, I hate to use the word tout, but I do like that word, touting all this. Well, we hit this site and we did all this stuff, which, you asked Israel not to do this. And then you just went ahead and did it and are now trying to make a PR campaign about how successful you are. It goes again, I think, just to the idea and the point that regardless of whatever the rhetoric is, it doesn't matter. What matters is what happens. What is the policy? What changes? Things don't change. We can run into this when politicians are elected or there's supposed to be some win in the community for the movement. But what's changing, though? What is the policy that is changing? And whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, it seems as if they're just leading the old man down the path of, whatever the deep state, if you want to call it that, or whatever, the United States General America wants to do. And it's a contradiction after contradiction. And the red lines that are supposed to be, drawn in the sand and you can't move past unless World War III occurs, continues to occur.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the thing. I mean, I love that you brought up the comparison in Ukraine. Like, this is something that they were alleging Putin wanted to do for quite some time. Earlier in the summer last year, they were like, oh, the Russians flew a drone into the what was the one that blew up Chernobyl, right? So it's like, wait, so the Russians with a ballistic missile advantage, a cruise missile advantage, an artillery advantage, and let's be honest, a drone advantage. They sent one drone into Chernobyl, one. Why? If they really wanted to hit it, if it was the Russians, they would probably just use a Zircon, or you know what I'm saying? Like one of their mini missile systems, a Caliber missile. And none of those things happened. And so you could see something more was happening than what was being admitted, right? And so in the same scenario now, the people that criticize those things now have nothing to say when the Israelis out and out admit we're attacking nuclear sites. Once they found out they were incapable of creating the destabilization within Iran that they wanted to, because let's be honest, and they whispered a little bit about it already. The real operation was a regime change. They wanted to go there, embarrass the government of Iran, foment a popular resistance that could be sustained, right? They wanted to be the Molotov cocktail that lit the candle that made the boom, and that just didn't happen. They weren't able to achieve their military objectives. They were not able to create a popular uprising. They were not able to decapitate any of the senior members that could ensure there would not be a continuity of state, right? Which again, it just goes back to misunderstanding the way that these governments are aligned and the way that these cultures will react to stress. Like the Americans in the West, honestly, they want to believe so much that you end up in these ridiculous scenarios, which brings us full circle to what we're saying. The Trump and the four horsemen just in the back like, yes, we blew it all up. We obliterated it. We won. Sounding like the fucking elder brain, man. Sounding like a villain, man. Obliterate! You know what I'm saying? Like, and the truth couldn't be anything further from that. You did damage to the site. Of course you did. You dropped 6 to 12 30,000-pound bombs. That's going to do damage, but you didn't destroy it. It was built with the understanding of what your tactics would be. And that's maybe the most embarrassing part of it all. The Iranians, the lowly Iranians, built something that the Americans and the Israelis couldn't destroy.
Yeah, how many do they even have? At some point, this was you have to acknowledge this, strategically was a useless strike. And there is no really military win that you can get here. Maybe it's a PR win, but PR, it's only so far you can take it. And we've talked about this before. This is, again, I think, giving countries a reason to say, well, this is it, Saruman. This is the greatest military that exists in the world. And I think people are fed up. And one of the reasons I was talking about the so-called Trump crash out, whether people believe it or not, is because you hear him just say wild stuff all the time. Maybe it's just he's like, doesn't care at all. He's like damn near an 80-year-old.
Right.
Super white guy who's been like the most privileged person of all time. So
spoiled as hell, man.
Spoiled as hell, right? But you hear stuff like this. I'm going to go ahead and just play this and we can just have a little discussion real quickly before we get out. There we are. Shot. So this is Donald Trump. He has these little sit-down meetings. So he's at NATO and they're asking him questions. I want you to take a listen to this. Boom, here we go.
And they're very smart people, and they can come back.
It's talking
Israel
about
got hit very hard, especially the last couple of days. Israel was hit really hard. Those ballistic missiles, boy, they took out a lot of buildings.
You get Trump here acknowledging that Iran's missiles, they was landing, man. And again, there's always this relationship.
Our very last episode, what do we say? Like, they lying, y'all. We telling you, Israel is getting lit the fuck up. Like, it's all out there in the universe if you know where to look for these things, even with the Israeli government launching these draconian measures. The draconian measures in and of themselves become an admission to how bad it's going. No, don't broadcast this fight, okay? I'll put you in jail. You can never show what happened to my fighter. You know what I'm saying? And then the fighter coming out like, yeah, I crushed him flawlessly, perfectly. And it's like, damn, bro, but you losing an arm and a leg, bro. Like it was a flawless victory. I don't know, man. Tell me you got lit the fuck up. Beersheba got lit the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like Haifa got lit the fuck up in a way that has never happened to the nation of Israel. Look, I'm not trying to laugh at it. It's just funny to me that a nation so arrogantly perceived themselves so confident in what they could do to another nation without a single thought as to, and this is why we say war is dangerous. No matter what you think, no matter what type of advantage you think you have, someone being hit will hit you back. And it's just the human animal. And the nation state is a human animal on steroids. You know, this is why culture is important. What is the culture of Iran? Iran is not a culture that is known for being beaten. They're not a culture that is known for being submitted. This is a culture that stood up to the Mongol Empire, you know, with limited success. You know, whether they were winning or they were losing, they were persisting. These are why it's important to understand what are the cultures you're attacking? What is their probability? Is this a weak culture? Can you cow them into submission? You have to know these things. America just simply said, can we enter their airspace? Yes. Can we release our munitions? Yes. Okay. So if we can our pilots get home? Yes. Okay. So if we can launch the mission and we can accomplish the mission exactly the way we want, fly over their airspace undefeated, drop these bombs and get out, there's no way the Iranian regime can survive. Okay, well, you did. Yeah, let's say everything went exactly the way you claimed you could do and you lost no pilots. Congratulations. That in and of itself is a very successful military sortie. However, the agenda that you wanted to accomplish was not achievable from the beginning. You know, I mean, if you were to release a nuclear bomb, just the energy, right, in the middle of a hurricane, you know what happened? Nothing. Because the hurricane's energy is too powerful. I mean, look, there'd be radiological fallout and all that shit would be terrible, and it'd be loss of life in that way.
Kyrgyzstan videos.
Right.
Blew up an atomic bomb in a hurricane.
Right. No, exactly, right. And they did a great video on what would happen if it went off at, you know, the bottom of the Mariana Trench, right? Nothing. It's the power of nature. It's just too much. The power, it's a fucking mountain. They were trying to blow up a mountain. You can't blow mountains up that way. It's not the fucking Death Star. It's not sci-fi. We live in a material conditions world. And in a material condition, just the amount of mass that a mountain makes up, you have to counteract all of that with the explosive device of ordnance. There's nothing that's that explosive. Certainly nothing non-nuclear, and realistically nothing nuclear either, because there are no nuclear weapons that are made as penetrators. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the best hope they would have had for something like this would have been, ironically, the Russian Orishnik technology, which apparently the Americans don't have access to.
Yeah.
So,
and you know, this is one of those things again where like 78% of Americans do not want this to happen. It's across the aisles. It's across, you know, the coast. It's in middle America, Southern America, you know, Northeast, West Coast. It doesn't matter. People don't want this. And this is just a reminder that what you want doesn't matter. What you want is they just look for casus bellis, but they want to do this regardless, and they will. And there's nothing that any president's going to do to change that. And that's the unfortunate reality of America and the world we live in. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so on and so forth. Check out our Podbean site, innercityleft.com. Purchase Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins. Fredo, Don't Go Against the Family. Solo song I just put out is available everywhere you find music. Type in Amin TMK. Tanky, anything that we missed? Final thoughts.
Inner City Left. I'll go against the family.
For Emoji Little Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.